Good evening. Good evening, one and all. How's it going? I can imagine. I've been doing a little construction work with the motorcycle clubhouse much of today, and I have a bit of a tan line. It is cooling off, however, I must say. The sun, it's a beautiful day today, but the sun is definitely lower in the sky and making for deeper blue. Um, Not the glaring, bleached out days of summer, but just a beautiful deep blue autumn days that are really nice. And the temperature has gone down a bit, 91 degrees. Wow. It's funny. We've got, well, by this time next week, we will have plunged into darkness the day after Halloween, full moon, and daylight savings time. It will be the dog times. And we will be plunged into darkness. Hmm. She would have loved Berkeley last night. The fog came rolling in. It was quite overcast. I was at a motorcycle party in Oakland, in East Oakland, and it took getting to Southeast Oakland to avoid the marine layer. And there's a resemblance of a half moon. But of course, once back in Berkeley, it was dark and foggy and brooding and whatnot. Quite the pre-Halloween setting. Happy Halloween. Wow. How long were you in Paris, by the way? I can imagine, even with the demonstrations they were having of late at that time. Wow. I can imagine. I can relate, for God's sake. I saw people last night for the first time in a long time, and it was like this was like what I imagined parole to be. But the funny part is I've gotten used to the solitude. I don't know if that's a healthy thing, but for now it's a sane thing. Um, Seeing most of my friends online as opposed to in real time. Yeah, I can imagine that. Also, it does free up some time, to say the least. One example, with all this reality, television is a reality is a very tough act to follow, and TV, it can't match reality. I tend to turn it off because there's so much better things I could do with my time. Reading, exercise, reaching out to people. Television comes at a distant third. I hate to say. There was a time when it was nice and wonderful, but not anymore. Aside from the occasional documentary, I'd rather read. Um, yeah, even the job market, how this affects the IT industry, which jobs in IT are more in demand versus which ones are certain to go overseas because everyone's staying at home, or the coding ones versus the hardware ones. People trying to find their way in the world career-wise. Just let alone reality, less the other parts of reality. Yeah, it's a lot, and we're still trying to figure it out. We're still learning, but we're still trying to get the hang of this new normal.
I am. Hi there. That would be Danny Uzilevsky. If you break your right ski, Uzilevsky. Uh, 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 Tchaikovsky. Really? Hmm. Excuse me. Huh. Yeah. Joe knows everybody. I believe I met Joe when I was playing with a group called We Press On in the Nails. Quite the swing dancer. Yeah. No, we
Yeah,
were
fond memories with Lee Press on the nails, and then later watching with Tom Johnson, and then other exploits.
Those were good times as well, for sure.
Oh yes.
I could play some of those songs. Yeah. Well, I've got a song that it's on the Chrome Johnson record, as Joe referenced. It's called "Against the Grain." And would you like to hear it? All right. Well, here we go. Well, I'm crying, waiting at the station for a train. And I'm dying, 'cause I know I'll never see your face again. I'll never see you tremble or the tears fall from your eyes. I've never had the heart to say goodbye. When I'm gone, I'll leave all of my memories behind. These tears and a handkerchief is all that you will find. Girl, I was born to ramble, I can't live out this here life. I've never had the heart to say goodbye. Yeah. I'm gonna ride, I guess I always win against the rain. But deep inside, I try to hide the misery and pain. Well, I could try to love you, and I wish that I could stay. But I guess it wouldn't work out anyway. So I'm crying, waiting at the station for a train. And I'm down, 'cause I know I'll never see your face again. Oh, I'll never see you tremble or the tears fall from your eyes. I've never had the heart to say goodbye.
Outstanding. To me, that's always been your theme song.
I like that song a little bit. Stood the test of time. That's a 20-year-old song right there. No? Oh, Lord. Wow. I see it on the Facebook here. It's I hear the sound on my phone. Right? Time, so I can. Yeah, I guess I'm not hearing you. Hearing myself.
I'm hearing everybody. They're just on the Zoom.
Right.
I could hear it on my phone. I turned on the volume briefly and I heard it.
Yeah. I
The broadcast.
yeah, I hear Joe and I hear myself on the phone, but I don't hear you, Caleb.
Yep, the device had turned itself off. Okay, I found it.
Found it?
Hey, folks, I am back. Every week it's a new thing with OBS turning something off or switching something at the last minute, and this week it switched off my microphone. And I'm glad you could hear the song and hear the guests. Now I'm just going to do a brief test here. And this has become like a weekly ritual. The audience having to wait. Hey, look at that. All right. So I'll just have to overdub post-production and cut this bit out. But I am back. Welcome to Sunday Live. And thank you for showing up each weekend with all of our fun technical difficulties. And in exchange, you get to hear great new music from all sorts of artists around the San Francisco Bay Area and the Seattle area. And we're going to dive right back in. Hey, Danny.
Hi there.
So what was that? You said that song is 20 years old?
Yeah, it's a song called "Against the Grain." Wrote it right around 2000, 2001. Yeah.
Cool. And that's from an album or?
I made an album with a band called Chrome Johnson. We played around quite a bit for many years, and we had a pretty good run there.
You got another song for us?
Oh, I absolutely do. Sure. This one's a song called Handful of Gimme. A mouthful of much obliged. You're asking for $1, but you still owe me $5. A thankless bag of mumbles, you ain't never satisfied. I'm sick and tired of listening to your cockamamie jive. Man, don't ask me for nothing. You got a box full of promises you ain't never gonna keep. Say you're sleeping in the alley in an old trash heap. Your pockets ain't empty, but the sure is deep. Man, you ain't fooling no one. You say chump and change ain't easy, but the weather strikes hard. If you make it through the winter, boy, you better thank the Lord. You're like a broken down jalopy trying to take me for a ride. You got a hand full of gimme and a mouth full of much oblige. Well, Lester's looking legless. He had him blown off in the wall. And Tina's turning tricks behind a dilapidated door. I saw you standing on the corner trying to be somebody. Whoa. Laughs at this, ain't you? I heard an earful of stories about how you need my cash. How you'll hobble down and homeless, need somewhere to crash. But I seen you sitting pretty, you was counting up your stash. Man, you ain't fooling no one. No, I don't buy your story, how your belly getting by. I seen you up there in the hotel just drinking wine, getting high. Your life is like a hustler, trying to get some on the side. You got a hand full of gimme and a mouth full of much oblige. Yo, I can go down, but you still owe me $5. A thankless bag of mumbles, you ain't never satisfied. I'm sick and tired of listening to your cockamamie jive. Man, don't ask me for nothing. You got a box full of promises you ain't never gonna keep. Say you're sleeping in the alley in an old trash heap. Your pockets ain't empty, but the show is deep. Man, you ain't fooling no one. You say chump change ain't easy, but the weather's twice as hard. If you make it through the winter, oh, you better thank the Lord. You're like a broken down jalopy trying to take me for a ride. You got a hand full of gimme and a mouth full of much oblige. Much oblige.
Fantastic.
Very cool. Now you're up in Marin, right?
Yeah, I am. I wrote that song when I was living on Potrero Hill, though.
So what year is that track from?
What's that?
What year is that track from?
I'd say about 2005.
Okay. Cool.
That was like the missing link between Woody Guthrie and Tom Waits.
That's funny.
That was awesome. That was cool.
I seem to have a fly in the room here. I feel like Mike Pence.
You feel very vice presidential.
Okay.
So, how did you get your start in music? And
Well, according to my mom, I was pretty much born with a ukulele.
she'd probably know.
Let's not. Yeah. Let me rephrase that.
Sorry. Moving on. Next question.
Early on. Yeah, my dad's a musician. He's his name is Marcus Uzilevsky, and he also went by the name of Rusty Evans. And he did all kinds of music.
So sorry, the style that you play, your dad played that same style?
He played a lot of different styles. I mean, he was putting out rockabilly stuff in the 50s. You know, and, he went through the 60s and did a bunch of folk music. He was in a band called the New Christie Minstrels. And he went into the whole psychedelic thing pretty hard and freak scene in San Francisco. He's a lot of country music, and I played with him in a band for a long time. It was a Johnny Cash tribute band called Rusty Evans and Ring of Fire, and he passed on a few years back, and I never. It's funny. I've been doing something similar. I've been playing I played a show last night with a band called Johnny and June Forever. I met my cohort, Essence Goldman, who's my singing partner in at least 3 or 4 different projects. And people kept comparing us to Johnny and June. So we started doing just a Johnny and June show, which is good fun.
Very cool. I got to meet Essence through Balanced Breakfast. Oh, probably, yeah, it had to be a little over a year ago when she was promoting the album Benny and the Believers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my mom has a copy of that CD because of that encounter. And I have here a video of you working with Essence. This is your guys' Tiny Desk submission for 2020 for NPR. I'd like to play that for folks, and then we'll be right back. We're not going to be right back because the video didn't appear.
No breaks for you.
So you're just going to have to play another live song.
Okay. Manage. Well, guitar here for you. So, this is a song called "That's No Way to Get Along." I'm going home, I'm on sit down. I'm going home, tell my mom. Going home, don't tell my mom. Going home, gonna sit down, tell my mom. Tell her that's no way to get along. With them low down, evil women. They treat your poor son so wrong. Low down when they treat your poor son wrong. Low down when they treat him most wrong. That's no way for him to get along. Lord. Well, they treat me like my poor heart made some rock or stone. Treat me like my poor heart made of stone. Treat me like poor heart made of rock and stone. But this sure ain't no way to get along. Oh, get along. Well, I stood out on the roadside, crying myself all alone. Standing on the roadside, crying all alone. Standing on the roadside, crying all alone. Crying that's no way to get along. And I'm waiting for some train come along, take me away from here. Waiting for a train, take me away from here. Train come, take me away from here. Oh, this sure ain't no way to get along. Oh, get along. Well, I'm going home, I'm gonna sit down. I'm going home, tell my mom. Going home, gonna tell my mom. Going home, gonna sit down, tell my mom. Oh, that's no way to get along. No, 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 that's no way to get along. No, that's no way for me to get along.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
So
Wonderful.
with lockdown, you said that you did a show last night. How was that put together?
Well, it was a streaming. My friend John Olmsted has a stage in his backyard. He's got a 3-camera shoot. There's a very limited amount of people that show up in the backyard. And, he streams it out to Facebook and YouTube. And there's been pretty much a couple of bands there every week for the past few months. From the or a saving grace in a lot of ways.
It's I've been talking to a lot of folks, and they talk about there's like underground shows going on, and there's sort of streaming socially distanced shows. Then some of the big acts are actually putting together in Britain. I don't know if you've seen these, where basically 4 people are on a platform, and the platforms are spaced across a field so that they can do big concerts with a smaller audience.
Correct.
So a lot of different strategies, and I'm constantly being asked, you
There
know,
sure are. It's a hard one to figure out.
yeah,
Even drive-in concerts. People
It's a
find that
drive concert. So hopefully you don't have the the teeny little sound from the speaker that where you remember at the drive-in you used to put the little speaker inside your car.
yeah.
absolutely.
That wouldn't sound too good.
No.
I wonder speaking of drive-ins, I wonder if drive-ins will make a revival. With so many movie theaters closing, I guess the real estate's the real challenge now. But with so many movie theaters, live theaters closing down, you could transmit the audio over Bluetooth or FM radio.
You could do that. It'd probably be a much better sound than it was in the.
I remember those speakers in the 70s.
Yeah, they hang on the windows and the side. They're almost nostalgic to have.
Definitely, there's little speakers.
Oh my God. Danny, I have to say that each and every one of your songs, you tell a complete and utter story. Each one is a fable, a novella unto itself. The music and the lyrics together, they're almost cinematic, and each one is fantastic. And each one is a standalone. It's not all your songs sound the same. Each one stands on its own unique merit, and it's fantastic to listen to.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I draw inspiration from a lot of different sources. I really like country blues and Django Reinhardt, Tom Waits.
I think, yes, I think you have your finger on the pulse of Americana, frankly. Uh, there's a lot of crossover there, rockabilly, blues, Americana, even old timey bluegrass.
Sure.
And I think you reach out and you have your yours is a salad that has all the spices of these various genres thrown together. And then you've put your signature on it. You've made it your own, and it's great.
Well, thank you. It's always a journey. Writing songs is good for the soul.
So you said you started music from childhood. Your dad was a musician. You've worked in the same genre. When did you start getting into actually recording? And my understanding is you have a recording studio there. In fact, I think we met a decade ago at your recording studio because I was working on a project and I was looking for a place in Marin. And we may have had a meeting. Was you or someone else at Allegiant? How do you pronounce it?
It's Allegiant.
Allegiant Studios. There, it's around the corner by Red Hill, maybe over there.
Maybe this studio has been around for about 8 years now.
Okay.
So if it were a decade ago, it might not have been this studio.
No, and I'm thinking about it. It would have been about 8 years ago, just maybe 7 to 8 years ago.
It would have been like our grand opening.
So you opened it about 8 years ago, and how did you get into the recording end? As a musician, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to, settle into recording studio technology.
Yeah, in this day and age, you kind of yourself. There's no record companies that are going to give you a pile of money to make a record. So, it was partially in a result of I was in a bad car accident. It's playing in a band called Elephant Listening Project, and my friend Eric Smith and I were driving back from the show. I was in a town called Katati. He was driving, and we were on the freeway. A drunk driver, came on the wrong side of the freeway and hit us head-on collision. And I was in hospital with many broken bones, and we both survive, and everybody's lucky to be alive at all. But as a result of that, I was unable to really play a lot of live shows for a while. Did play a couple of shows from a wheelchair, but I. But anyway, that's I figured, well, I can still move my fingers around and still sing, so I might as well start recording some stuff. And I didn't really know if I'd be able to how well I'd be able to walk or jump around on a stage anymore, but I knew I could be in the studio and get something done.
That is the most intense how I started recording story I've ever heard, man.
Well, it's born out of necessity, I guess.
So you started recording on you done the albums before that, but then you started recording on your own 8 years ago.
Yeah, actually, my dad had tape machines and whatnot back when I was a kid. I've always been messing around with recording, but I dove in a lot farther. Built in the commercial recording studio here in San Anselmo, the Legion Records, and we have plenty of space for a full band to come in here and record things, different rooms that people could be in, and socially distanced. Actually, I feel like it's probably safer than going to the grocery store, really. So, which I've trying to keep the place alive with various projects, but everything's on the verge of shutting down. There's, there's all the music clubs that we know well. If they're not already closed, they're right on the verge.
I heard the bad news about 19 Broadway and even Perry's.
Yeah, I think they're both for sale. Um, Slim's closed down. I don't see how in the Fillmore, how are they going to keep paying their rent for the next? How long is this going to go on?
Probably another year.
That's
Yeah, I have fond memories. I worked for 19 Broadway 7 days a week for a couple of years. And a fond memory, Monday night was open mic up and down the street.
it sure was.
People traveling guitar cases would go to 19 Broadway and they'd play at Perry's, and then they would come back to, and they would cross pollinate the set.
Yeah, there was the Cafe Amsterdam in the middle too, I think.
That's right.
This is in a town called Fairfax in California here. It's kind of like a mini Austin, Texas or something, or it was. And there were 7 music 7 nights a week, and at least 3 different clubs, and there's none of that anymore. The town is very sleepy.
Even more so today, sad to say.
Yeah.
The irony of all this, everything closing down because of the pandemic, the irony of all this is that people are actually starved for music. They're starved for nightlife, but they're starved for good music, and they're starved for live performances. So the irony of all this, the demand is greater than ever, and yet there's just not a way to distribute that, has to satisfy that demand. Be it through a distribution, be it through live performances or telecast performances. It's now like the Zoom video is taken over for what broadcast television used to be way back then.
That's true. Uh, it's hard to know what to do. I mean, Essence and I have been kicking around the idea of getting a van, a large, RV type of thing with a stage on the top or something, and taking it to the people.
It's funny you mentioned that. I'm helping launch a new album by a Seattle band. An album produced by Jack Encino? Yes, Jack Encino of Nirvana, Soundgarden fame, whatnot. And just this weekend they did exactly that. They went ahead and got a trailer, a flatbed truck, and they bought it and they've converted it, and they're now just driving around the greater Seattle area doing concerts on the road, literally.
I think you're going to probably run into permitting issues and things like that, but it's I don't really know what the future is for live music, but we can't stop doing what we're doing. So it's good to have a recording studio to be able to get your ideas out there. But now, the only way to sell your music to people is to play live shows. And now, can't do that.
Remember the live performance? What was it? The outdoor venue, Danny, that was owned by Phil Lesh. It's been out in the Canal District.
It's called Terrapin Crossroads.
Yes,
Terrapin Crossroads. It's indoor. There's two indoor stages and there's an outdoor stage as well. I've heard that they've been starting to do a couple shows out there. Very tentatively, it seems. For some reason, they seem to be the best set up for something like that. But I think Phil Lesh, he had a liver transplant or something like that. Well, I think he's kind of at risk for COVID more so than most people. So I think they've been pretty tentative with starting to have concerts out there.
That backyard's a great space for trying to do it, but like you said, if I know when I moved to Marin 7 years ago, the average age was like 65. So you have a large older community, and a lot of older community that patronizes Terrapin. So that's definitely tricky.
Yeah. It's I made a video out on the street with Essence 2 months back. I filmed it for the Tiny Desk concert or Tiny Desk podcast. Didn't win. Yeah.
Well, I think I can quickly add this, and we can show that here today.
Oh yeah.
If everybody just hang on, the screen's going to go blank for about 30 seconds, and I'm going to add this video, and then we're going to play Danny and Essence, These Hard Times music video. Hold on to your hats, folks. All right, here is These Hard Times by Essence and Danny.
can I. If they could do it, so can I.
So, Danny, tell everybody what Tiny Desk is and how you got involved with working on a Tiny Desk video with Essence.
We actually made 2 videos for Tiny Desk. One was the name of Danny and Essence, which is a duo. And then we Essence made her own video under the name of Essence, which I played with as well. I wore sunglasses and a face mask. But Tiny Desk is an NPR show put on by Bob Boylan and features huge names in the entertainment business as well as up-and-coming people. They have a contest every year, which there are thousands of submissions. The winner would normally get to go on some kind of a tour or something like that. After this year, obviously, but it's good exposure and good people. It goes out to a lot of people, and it's a special thing. Like a lot of other things, you go and play and play in the disc jockey Bob Boylan, and you go play in his office. It's huge people playing over there, and so it's lesser known folks.
I've heard a lot about it through Balanced Breakfast. A lot of people, submitting videos and submitting songs and going through the hoops to get on Tiny Desk. Like you said, it's a great exposure to be on NPR and that large audience. Now, this was your submission for Tiny Desk. Have you actually gotten to get on Tiny Desk?
No, not with this project. As you mentioned, Essence last year she put out that album called Birdie and the Believers. So quite a story unto itself. But her video didn't win, but she was still selected to go on to
Cool. Well, I keep saying every year I should at least submit something, and I don't. So you guys are way ahead of the curve there. You got another live song you'd like to do for us? We've got some time.
Sure.
You got some time.
Alrighty then. Which is a song I wrote called Rio Grande. It's I don't know, as Joe mentioned earlier, it is kind of cinematic in some ways. It's about a guy. I think he robbed a bank. He's on horseback. He's got a sack of silver dollars. He's riding through the desert. He's just really thirsty. He's trying to get to the Rio Grande. Yeah. you'd trade all that silver for a cup of water. I can't ride any longer. I can barely see the trail. Trade my fortune for some water. I ain't got no living by pill. Now I got a sack of silver dollars, but I've got no place to go. In my home I am not wanted, so I'm headed down to Mexico. Worn out but will come in Kentucky. Yes, I know they want me dead, and there's many who'd like to be collected. The price that's on my head. Lord, I know I ain't done much to rent, but I swear I will hold to your hand. If I ever taste the water at the shores of the Rio Grande, at the shores of the Rio Grande.
Isn't it strange to perform a song and not hear an audience react?
What's that?
Isn't it strange to you perform a song and then there's just silence?
Well, it is a little weird, especially when you're actually performing. I spend a lot of time singing and playing in a recording studio, so I understand what you said. Live stream thing is that was just different.
Where did you grow up?
I was born in San Francisco. My parents moved to Marin County, Fairfax specifically, when I was about 5. And I've been kicking around the Bay Area ever since. Moved back to San Francisco for a bit. I've been out in High Point Ways National Seashore. I'm actually back in Fairfax.
And
I was sheltering in place in San Francisco. But as of today, finally found a place in Marin. We've been wanting to do that for a while. So I can do that.
I was curious about your songwriting, whether, how much, here you write a song about Rio Grande, but you were born in San Francisco. grew up in Marin. Now I know Marin can be very rural, and especially
Well, I've done quite a bit of touring around with bands and whatnot. I've done the whole Chitlin circuit, as it were, down south, and the whole, from California out to Chicago and East Coast.
I'm always curious about like the stories you hear, like lead songwriter of the Beach Boys did not surf, did not go to the beach. It was his brother was a surfer, and they were thinking, well, hey, we can make our music become their soundtrack.
Sure.
But it wasn't like surfers came up with this music. It was more like there was a surf community that had an interest, and they wrote for it. Or we're talking my last week interview about ABBA and how Vinny and Bjorn would write songs for a market.
True. I think her dad was their manager, and might have had something to do with that. I think Dennis Wilson, the drummer, surf.
So for yourself, how do you feel like when you write a song like Rio Grande that you're telling a universal American story, or that there's an experience in your life that informs that story, or is it sort of crafted for that particular market, for lack of a better word?
That's hard to say. I don't know what the market necessarily is or isn't for that, but it's I don't know. It's something out of a movie to me. It's, whether it's been made or not. There's I just imagine this guy kind of falling through the desert. He was just needing a drink of water, try to flee the country with his, trying to get to the river. But Rio Grande is probably not the greatest water to be drinking, but it makes sense if you're trying to flee the country. It's not born of any personal experience, but I like spaghetti westerns and things like that. So I think that,
yeah, my dad's big on them, and I definitely grew up watching them over and over, all the Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns.
Yeah, like Hang 'em High or something.
Oh yeah. I think that was the last one I watched last year when I was over at his place. It was Hang 'em High, and then my mom's parents came from Oklahoma, so there's a lot of that Hank Williams Jr., Hank Williams Sr., Hee Haw, and all of that. Which is Hee Haw's like the Hollywood version of it, right? Beverly Hillbillies, the Hollywood version of that life. But they came out to California to pick cotton and in the Central Valley, and brought that music with them from the Plain States.
It's funny that you mentioned that. There's a line in These Hard Times, the video that you played, where I wrote Child of the Dust Bowl, Hill Choctaw, right into the Western Shore. My mom was, her parents came out from Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl. So many others. And they settled in Chico, which is, it's the Central Valley, but it's definitely flat. Not, you know.
It's definitely still, it's a little further, you're further north than the main, the San Joaquin Valley is definitely the farm heartland, but there's plenty of farm land in the Sacramento Valley too.
Yeah, it's funny how people gravitate toward what they know. They go out here and just head for the hills. And they wanted something flat they could farm, you know.
Look, flat farmland, just like back at home before the Dust Bowl. I feel like, when I read Grapes of Wrath, I was like, wow, this is my, grandparents. And I think some of the more immediate, there was a few of my aunts and uncles. And I'm sure I see my mom's in the chat room. She can talk to people about what it was like growing up as an Okie, picking cotton in California. And I think that experience, correct me if I'm wrong, Mom, that experience still lingers, even though she grew up in California. Her parents went through the Dust Bowl directly. Just growing up in California as that first generation that got plots of land and could get some horses and pigs and farm cotton and whatnot, here left an indelible mark on her way of looking at the world, which then informed me about my way of looking at the world. So in some ways right now in COVID and the song talking about, hey, if the previous generation got through this, we're going to get through this. For me, I suppose I've always had a bit of that mindset of everything can blow away tomorrow, and make sure you pack goods in the garage, and that sort of survival instinct was instilled in me.
Yeah, that's we have a lot of big jugs of water, and probably enough canned food that lasts a year. In the first month, this pandemic, there was some hoarding going on for sure.
My wife was like, "You're going all survivalist on me." I'm like, "No, it's just practical. It's a crisis."
I still don't understand what the whole toilet paper thing is about. But,
yeah, my French friends are going, "What is this? You get the bidet, it washes your butt, and it's all good." One other aspect I think of, with my family, and my dad's family had dairy farms and almond orchards in the Central Valley. So from his side of the family, I get the trucks, right? The pickup trucks and the dog and running the farm. And my mom's side, I got that sort of Okie migrant and, the honky-tonk bar influence, and yes, the Cadillac. So my sisters, before that, there was a Pontiac in there, but by the time I came around and really was aware of things, my mom had a Cadillac. So she would drive around selling Stanley Home products during the week, and then on Saturday would go deliver the products door to door. It's kind of like, folks don't know Stanley Home products, it's kind of like Amway, kind of one of these, back in the day when you ordered a bunch of products, cleaning products, household stuff and whatnot. So for me, Saturday meant riding around in a Cadillac, delivering stuff to people. And so a lot of the style of music that you do, even though I mainly make electronic music. With my Caleb album, I'm doing some more country rock folk influence stuff, but I've mainly been electronic in my career. And yet when I hear your music, it's immediately familiar to me, and it's something that I feel like somehow growing up in suburban San Jose, I still experienced.
Yeah.
And San Jose at that time was, I don't know, like a quarter cow town. It wasn't as built up and LA like right as it is now. Where the light rail station is near my parents, used to be a farm, and there was suburbia and this sort of corporate and tech stuff starting and whatnot. But just a block over would be an orchard, or a block over
Yep.
would be
Exactly.
a dairy farm. That's of course.
That is a great way to live because it's very versatile because you have elements of everything. You're on the cusp of the frontier, but there's a little bit of civilization there. And also, I think we appreciate the music about faraway places and even faraway times. Um, in the here and now, it can be very stifling, especially in an urban environment. When your experiences are strictly urban or metropolitan, and now that we can't travel as well as we can, we're flying to different lands and whatnot. Um, Music that it depicts the earlier time, a faraway place, is greatly appreciated. In the case of Americana, we can hear this, and for the time we're listening to music, we're all drugstore cowboys, and it's a great escape and it's a great perspective.
Absolutely. It's you know, uh, sheltering in place in San Francisco is very difficult for me. I felt so boxed in there. Felt very unsafe. Just, I couldn't wait to get out of there. I just, I somehow I feel like at least I can run for the hills here somehow, or go for a walk and not, not be around them. Always felt really trapped. I don't know quite how to describe it, but I felt like a rat in a cage, And
You're not alone there. And everybody that can hear your music for that time that they're listening, they too can run for the hills, as it were.
yeah,
They don't have to be claustrophobic for the time they're listening. And your music depicting faraway places, however claustrophobic their environment, they can escape for that moment in time.
uh,
And that's what's great about your songs.
yeah, it's a good escape. It's take you to a different place.
Yeah, I'm thinking about So Alex lived in San Francisco, and I lived in San Rafael, and we decided to go move to Seattle. I had this trip to Paris planned to work with a buddy of mine on his software company for a little over a month and live there, and then resettle here. And there are days like this last week when the temperatures plummeted from 70 to 30 degrees at night, where my California body says, what is happening? I don't understand this. Is it January? What? And then there's moments where I say, in a crisis, there is wooded lands right across the street. There is a creek going through the backyard. If I needed water, I can take my filtered mug and go get water.
Right.
And when you're in San Francisco, you're in like Disneyland. It's the services that are there, and you're surrounded by water and a mountain to the south. So it's like you're on an island, and if anything goes wrong, and a lot of people had already for years been talking about how if San Francisco had a serious fire, the firemen can't live in the city because it's too expensive. And if it was due to an earthquake, the bridges to get the fire trucks there would be collapsed. So, yeah, I think how you felt is reasonable for the reality.
Yeah.
It's I'd like to think it's a theme park, and as long as everything's working and the water is working, electricity working, a theme park is a fun place to be. But as soon as it's locked down and all the water goes off, it's a rather creepy place.
That's for sure. It's does not feel like the safest place to be. And all the perks of living in San Francisco are more or less gone. So uh,
It's the nightlife. It's the social community. I mean, that's why I love to go into San Francisco and, sort of living part-time in San Francisco was, wow, I could get on the BART train, go downtown. Go to a club. I get a cell phone call from Joe because, of course, Joe is right up the street. And they're telling me, hey, meet me at this club because they're having an event. Okay, gotta get over to that club. And hey, there's a new, underground speakeasy bar that's opened. Oh, let's, get in a cab, go up to Columbus or catch an Uber. There's this constant being out life social experience that made San Francisco magical. And you could ignore the ugly the ugly side, or what a friend of mine said, I love playing in San Francisco, but I wouldn't live here because it smells like piss. So yeah, that's a tough one. If all the clubs, the reason is for being there and connecting with friends and musicians and artists and having all these places to play every night of the week, if that's all gone, it's a whole different creature. And I'm already seeing how a lot of the .coms that moved in the last half decade or so, and we're converting San Francisco into this hot spot of tech and building new buildings, and they're thinking, why are we spending all this money on big tower blocks and office blocks? Everybody's going to be working home for 2 years. So I'm very curious of what's going to happen to San Francisco by the end of this.
That's all these tech people are, they don't necessarily need to be in some big campus like they are most of the time. Trying to pay those exorbitant rents in San Francisco. It's insane. It can't last for that long. There's nowhere for it to go, but
Yeah, my biggest hope is that the pressure that has been put on South of Market for the last 20 years by more and more companies moving in, more and more apartments coming in, the battles between the apartments and clubs like DNA Lounge and Slims and all this. And Seattle's going through the same thing. When I moved up here, they were already really hurting before COVID.
Yeah.
The music scene up here had collapsed as far as economically because this area infrastructure is not set up for the amount of population that moved up here over the last decade. So a lot of concert venues had shut down or were getting close to shutting down anyhow before this happened. And I was at the first several meetings of a big initiative in King County to declare some of the clubs historical landmarks so they couldn't be developed as anything else, and create community centers out of them to try to preserve this. And then they were just like, yay, we have hope again. And then
I think the nightlife in San Francisco, the music scene, has been it's on a steady decline before this happened anyway. I don't want to be one of those people that things ain't what they used to be, but it's just, it isn't. It's a musical community in San Francisco. It must exist somewhere, but I haven't seen it.
Because in a crisis like this, historically, things eventually collapse. They get cheaper. People abandon areas. Artists move in. Nightlife happens again, and you get this vibrant reaction. But San Francisco is so expensive, and downtown Seattle has become so expensive. Is it just that those people write it out and everybody else just gets crushed underneath and never come back, and then these cities lose all their arts? I'm just curious which way that's gonna go. And
Too.
but you would have to have you'd have to have a migration, I guess, of people out of San Francisco for that to happen, and people are so expensive to have bought in. If you are in and you can stay in, you're not going to go anywhere else. So flip of the coin there, and so
Yeah, the
hey,
rents in San Francisco are already plummeting. The studios by 35%, single bedroom apartments by about 21% already, and the corporate vacancy rate is skyrocketing at this point. So to say nothing of the arts, the artists, the musicians, the performers. You see them in Oakland when and before the COVID 19. You see them in just in mass running to Vallejo, the theatrical societies, and some of the musicians. Vallejo has a big underground arts and music movement. Um, you wouldn't know it because of the COVID, of course, but yeah, that's east and north, away from San Francisco. And now San Francisco is almost like a depression area. So it may be the new Detroit in a couple of years, and then next thing you know, artist communities start popping up in San Francisco yet again. Um, we'll see. We'll see if it goes full circle or not.
and here in Seattle, a lot of the arts had moved down south to Tacoma, Olympia, um, which I think is, in some ways it's the San Jose, Oakland kind of big area, where Seattle is very compact, a little more San Francisco like. So the arts had moved all down there because it got too expensive in Seattle proper.
Tacoma and Olympia, huh?
Yeah, or I mean, Tacoma really mainly is where I heard, before things locked down, I was starting to tour. I did a show. I was going to have a big show a couple weeks after. And from here, I was meeting a lot of people, and I was going to start moving, sort of my connections further south. And I was told in Tacoma there was a big art scene, and just never got the chance to go out because you figure I landed in November, settled into January, booked a couple gigs in March, and boom, it all ended. So I really have not got to, I didn't get the chance to explore the greater art scene up here.
Yeah, that's big. That's terrible.
So it's funny doing this show from Seattle. Most of my guests are from the Bay Area and San Francisco Bay Area. And I kind of feel like it's funny to be doing, I guess, a Seattle show, but it's really a San Francisco Bay Area show. And the guests and the topics that we're covering, because that's mainly what I know myself.
I think there would be parallel worlds between Seattle and the Bay Area. There's the Seattle Tacoma area, SeaTac, and the Bay Area. Parallel worlds with regard to what artists and musicians are facing nowadays,
Yeah,
even before the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that's true across the whole United States. As things got costlier, artists have to always move out to the cheaper area, and eventually you end up out in the desert in New Mexico or something. So there's always that push, but with the development of all those areas, it used to be like artists could go to Vegas, or artists go out to Arizona and get space. If you do like sculptural art, where are you going to do sculptural art in a compact area, right? But even a lot of those areas have become gentrified to the point that you've either made it in some way to be there, or you can't be there, and you move on the caravan.
We've seen art communities around in and around the Salton Sea of all things. I don't see the Salton Sea as being gentrified by people following the artists and raising rents. So.
Right.
But the Salton Sea is rather extreme, to say the least.
I
But
think
there they
of
are. Slab City, Salton Sea. Um, it's they're outlier communities in outlier geographies.
Yeah, and I think that's always been the case. I'm thinking back, we're talking about the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. and the arts, and I'm a fan of Harry Parch as a composer, and it's a lot of, if you hear a lot of this kind of clunky iron stuff that you hear in Tom Waits, that's because he knows Harry Parch. Harry Parch lived out in the desert and invented this whole 24 note tonal system, and used brake drums as percussion, and built musical instruments around his sound system. And he would marry it with a lot of poetry, sort of oaky and dust bowl poetry, very abstract stuff, but it had that feeling like it's the music of being out in the desert and pots and pans and old car parts.
That's fascinating. That's the music comes from the environment that you're in, and
Yeah, look up The Letter by Harry Parch sometime. And I think that's a short piece that gives you a flavor of his bigger work.
yeah. I'm gonna have to bid you guys farewell. I have to go make dinner for the family here.
Understood, and I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Folks will have Mystic Moment after we say bye to Danny. Thank you so much for doing this week's episode. Look forward to hearing more music from you, and feel free to post stuff that you have in comments.
I would love that. I really appreciate the opportunity to play for you and have a good conversation with you all. I'll hope to see you next time.
See you, Danny.
Very good to see you. Very good to see you online, and I hope to see you live very soon.
I'd like to see you in person, Joe. That would be great.
We need to take that motorcycle ride.
There you go. All right. Well, I'll see you soon.
See ya. That was our guest, Danny. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. I'm going to try. Uzilevsky. I kind of have this fear of mispronouncing people's names or mispronouncing words. So lots of times I don't try. But I suppose I really should face that and try. Ha! Look, it's this week's theme. Face Your Fears. The Halloween episode. For folks that haven't watched the show before, every week I challenge the audience in a new way that opens doors or removes barriers in your life. So this week's theme is Face Your Fears. There's something that scares the bejeebus out of you. Take a long look at it. Now, if it happens to be a wild bear walking down a suburban street, perhaps you shouldn't take a long look at it. There's fear and there's fears. Fear is a normal, healthy reaction to a situation that's dangerous and that you have to take action with. Fears are when maybe a real situation or a real situation becomes a memory or a perceived habit, some sort of trigger, something that is in your mind. Your fears do not exist outside of you. They exist within you. And the first step to conquering them is recognizing that they are not external things, they are internal things. So you have the opportunity to go into your own head and do some rewiring. When I was growing up, I was really did not like a certain life form. I won't even say the name, because there might be people out there that are disturbed by these life forms. And they're creepy. They're creepy. I didn't like them. And so I eventually did this strange thing where my mom had some mason jars, and rather than crushing these little buggers or tossing them outside, I put them in the mason jar and put the lid on it, and I left them in my bedroom. So I knew that they were in the bedroom with me, but they're in a mason jar, sealed, so they cannot get to me, they cannot hurt me. And I did this for about 6 months, and I lost my fear of it. I still don't like walking into webs in case they're habitated by these critters, but they don't totally freak me out the way they used to. It used to make my skin crawl, and now I'm like, oh, okay, there's one on the wall. I'll grab it and I'll put it in a glass and dump him outside. Let him live his little life in nature, and it doesn't freak me out at all. So think of something this week that you can challenge yourself to overcome, some fear that you have to let go of and open up space for something new to come in. That's your Mystic Moment for this week. My name is Caleb. If you're tuning in for the first time, we have a show every week from about 5 o'clock to 6:30 with a guest or artist that you might not have heard of, that we get to expose you to their music and videos. So do please tune in each week and check out what's happening. I'm going to check back in with Joe, see how things are going with him. And, yeah. Hey, Joe.
Yes. Hey. Hi.
Hey, Danny, I can't remember if Stefan introduced me to Danny to be on the show or if you did.
One of us suggested. I think because of who and what he is and has done, and his long history in the local and regional music scene, not just music scene, music industry, because now he's producing, he's recording and producing. So the thing with Danny is that I first saw him with the lead press on the nails. It was fantastic performance. And also his side projects, Tom Johnson, and his other endeavors. Even his open mic night that they would have at the 19 Broadway in Fairfax, or Perry's in Fairfax. An open mic night meant Broadway Street in Fairfax was just awash with musicians walking back and forth between the three venues at the Amsterdam Cafe, 19 Broadway in Fairfax, doing at least one or more sets of their music. And Danny would show up, and Danny would take over. And all you needed was Danny, an amplified acoustic guitar, and he could hold an audience for hours by himself. No just nothing. Just him, the guitar, and that was all we needed. Fantastic performance. And his own signature on it. It's like Ry Cooder with after several cups of coffee. You have Danny Uzilevsky. And the thing is, so all the side projects, solo projects, band projects, you press on the nails. I've known him for the longest time. I've gotten with him a great many times because I was working out in Fairfax at the time, working the nightclub, 19 Broadway, and so as such, and now for him to even at the Hairpin Crossroads, Paul's last gig there, in the daytime afternoon with the canal river as a backdrop, fantastic. Saw him into the sunset and twilight. Danny now producing. It's almost like he's come full circle. His car accident, helping him further along in his career, ironically. And it shows us not to be complacent at this time, at this day and age, even pre-COVID. Musicians having to be supportive and assertive in their creativity, in their production, even little things like copyright and distribution. It behooves musicians and performing artists not to rest on their laurels, and no one's going to rest on their laurels today with COVID and whatnot, even the gentrification before COVID. So Danny did in advance what many of us are having to do now. He saw the writing on the wall. With him, it was a car accident. With us, it was gentrification and COVID now. Having to be assertive and creative. We have this setback. And what Danny demonstrates to us as musicians, artists, is that this setback has to become an opportunity. Trying times has always been the basis for the best of music. The best of music has always come out during trying times. The early 80s is a great example. The Reagan was in it. And so this is another classic trying time right now. You have people like Danny, right, and yourself at the forefront of opportunity as to what to do during this trying time. And it was great to Danny Cajellis show us what he's been up to now. And it's a great example and it's an inspiration.
working to share with all the artists I engage with through Balanced Breakfast or through my consulting to challenge them to think of revenue streams that they hadn't. Because a lot of folks, like Danny was alluding to, once upon a time you could make music and then tour and then retire and the royalties would come in. You know, after the 2000s, that just wasn't happening. With rapid downloading and piracy. And then iTunes came and kind of turned that around for a time. And now that's gone. And streaming's here. And streaming is a whole different beast. And there are some people who have cracked that nut. But most people were relying on playing live as a way to compensate for recorded music no longer making income. And a lot of artists who had retired suddenly were out of retirement doing shows. And then now that has been cut. And our recording artists are just trying to figure out what the heck to do. You know, what are the possibilities here? Some, you know, big acts are going to Netflix and saying, hey, how about we cut a deal and we have a custom show? You know, there are a lot of these couch concerts that big acts are doing now. And for the local artists, it's you have to get on a streaming show like this and put out your tip jar. Hey, everybody, you know, I'm on Caleb's show. Here's my PayPal. Here's my Venmo. Please help me. And I know some artists are hesitant to do that. They're like, well, everybody's hurting together. So who am I to go ask them to give me $1? So it's really tricky. And my response is that, well, you have to put it out there. It's other people's choice whether or not they can contribute and help you. And also challenge yourself. Look at what you're offering. If you're just saying, hey, here's my music, go listen to it, that isn't going to cut it anymore. You have to say, hey, here's a community that's hurting. Let's collaborate together. You know, either to put a smile on their face with some cool music. You know, you have to tie it into something bigger. It just can't be the recording artist in their studio chucking the music over the fence anymore. And it can't be just you roll into town and you're playing show after show. And, you know, hopefully people buy the t-shirts and whatnot. You have to step back from it and look at what you're doing more strategically in a bigger picture these days. And bring value. And bring value. What music do people want to hear? You know, bring value to them as opposed to pushing yourself at them.
Absolutely. Yeah, and artists, you know, protecting and having to protect themselves and their music against copyright infringement, but just, you know, piracy in general. And so if you collaborative spirit, a community spirit of support, because we bring a smile to their face by support, they can bring a smile to our face with greater music. And we have starved for music, so it does not behoove us to not support, you know, work for public television. They could work for streaming.
I think you and I were talking about this, and I certainly am talking about a number of other people, is how much music are you listening during COVID? Are you listening to more? What would happen if in March of last year all music ceased? Because music takes time to make, it takes money to make, and to do well. And imagine if all that suddenly was vanished, and not only were we locked up, but we had no music. And when I say no music, I don't even just mean listening to your favorite recording artists. I mean, imagine TV shows suddenly had no music. Music is not something that is extra. I certainly got this a lot growing up. Oh, you know, music is, you know, we're not going to fund music because that's extra. That's not something that's a real job or real career. Well, hey, I can personally tell you music takes a lot of effort, even if you're extremely talented, to produce. And and your world would be like going from color to black and white without it.
Absolutely. And people thought nothing of cutting art programs out of school, out of scholastic curriculums. And then with this trying times, sports programs are being cut and people are losing their minds. Well, now you know how the art community felt. You know, now you know how the music shows felt. The music departments, theater. Um, when they get cut, we don't think of anything, but then sports gets cut, and then we lose our minds. But this is exactly how it feels. And we need the arts. We need music. We need storytellers. We need stories. We need people to tell the stories, such as Danny Uzilevsky, such as you. Because these stories are told through music, through feeling, through emotion. That is the pulse of our time, and at the same time, a timeless story, a timeless fable, and yet timely, contemporary at the same time. We need this. We can't cut this back. That is why we need to support one another. We need those tip jars, those virtual tip jars. We need Venmo. We need PayPal, so that we can have people come online. So, I got to sit here and talk all night long with people like that, but we're expressing, the need for music, musicians, and songs, and people to support them. It's an upward spiral.
I'm going to take that cue to play one of my songs. I've been asked to, in honor of October, and this being the last October episode, to play October. If you would like to patronize my music, you can find it on Bandcamp and all the platforms, Apple Music, whatnot. And you can find it under Caleb, Kalib. This particular track is from a project I've done since 1984 called Audio Terrorist. And this track is called October. And it's interesting because Facebook now won't let you just play a song. You have to have a social interaction. So, Joe, you're going to be the social interaction, and you get to like move around and make faces and like, these reaction videos people have, like, so you get to react to the video so that Facebook doesn't censor us. That's your job for the next 3 minutes.
The next 3 nights?
The next 3 minutes.
Well, minutes. Let's see what we can do.
Okay, so here is October. I'm going to start that over because it was blazingly loud. Sorry, people. That's what happened when you try to throw something in after sound check. All right. Joe, are you ready?
Absolutely.
We're going to edit the video right here in post-production. Yes. And here is October.
Your smile promised private treasures. It was such a simple pleasure. Seeds were planted but died midway. Your dancing flesh just slipped away. October, you leave me so cold. Why did you go? Was it only nature's call? To believe we're all unique. Our lovers tell a different critique. October, you leave me so cold. Why did you go? Was it only nature's call?
That was October, which was the lead single off my album Entertainment for the Day, which ironically had a guest appearance by Lee Presson of Lee Presson and the Nails, which is a band that Danny used to play in. It's a small world after all. That was in 2015. The initial production was done by Tyrone Stanford, who also did that blazing guitar solo there. Dave Penny provided the saxophone. He was a guy that I originally met at Apple and Apple Computer, and he played on the 1994 Audio Terrace tour, saxophone in the orange jumpsuit. So if you look up that tour on the Audio Terrace Facebook page, you will see Mr. Dave Penny and his saxophone. Let's see what else about that song. It came pretty quickly, and and the main music was composed by a friend of mine, Eric Wenger, who back in the 90s was famous for creating software called Bryce, and then Metasynth, and then Artmatic. And ironically, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I started helping him sell his software. So you never know what connections you'll make and how many years later they're going to come back around and have a moment where they tie together.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting point. Collaboration and teamwork, pulling resources together. I mean, yes, a person like Caleb can do everything by himself and whatnot, but reaching out to backup musicians, to developers, people to mix the music from the East Coast and send the file back to him saying, what do you think of this? Collaboration is everything. For all of our self-sufficiency and the inexpensive production with modern technology, that human interaction, that human connection is everything, because 2 heads are better than 1, and 20 more are better still. And that happens through collaboration, connectivity, cooperation, pooling our resources. And our best resources are going to be ultimately one another.
I would say that while I can do a lot of music on my own, my favorite tracks, and I think the best tracks, have been the ones that have had collaborators. So on that track, you had Eric Vinger, you had Tyrone Stanford, you had Dave Penny. I think it was Stacy that did the backup vocals, a friend of mine that I used to do karaoke in Marin with. She came up by for a couple hours in the afternoon and, did a backing track. And a lot of people worked for a beer, and and then we saved up our pennies and sent it off to London to Sefi Carmel, who's mixed stuff with David Bowie and blah, 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 to do the final mix and mastering and send it back to us. That level of collaboration, I think, always creates something more interesting than the original.
Yeah, when everyone has their signature on it, it means a lot more.
I mean,
Means a lot more.
sometimes it can be a train wreck. It's a big pile of a bunch of different ideas, and that's, when you have to hit the editing and carve out what it is. It wasn't for October. October was like, my friend gave me his track and said, hey, you want to do something with this? And then I came up with the lyrics, and I started, at that time, what I would do is I would add lyrics and then make a karaoke file and go perform it at karaoke until I learned it and worked it out and rearranged it. And then I would place the final song, the vocals and lyrics, to the music. And then we would then remix the elements of the music and add other parts and go from there. But yeah, it's interesting. Not every song has its own path, and there have been attempts to make songs much like Rise Up, like the new Caleb single, came out of Band Jam that was like 25 minutes long. And out of that 25 minutes, Tim Lehane edited down to maybe like a 5 minute and gave structure and bits and pieces that I had sung and, condensed it. But if you listen to the whole thing, it might be, a bit of everything in the kitchen sink. So that's a whole different process, trimming that down. And then I trimmed it down to a 3-minute song and reworked the lyrics and re-recorded those on top. So there's a lot of different paths to collaborating. I like to say to folks, if they're like, oh, well, I'm not good at this, or engage folks. And every once in a while, you will end up with something that just, it doesn't, you built it out of clay and it fires and it cracks to pieces, and okay. But then again, the Japanese had this whole thing where if you break a bowl, right, you bind it back. You find all the pieces and you bind it back together with like gold.
Yes.
And they consider that that's stronger. So you preserve, and that's another thing that can come out of collaboration where you think it's a total disaster, and then you find another element to weave into it so that even that becomes a thing. And it's an interesting thing to do when, like me, my personality is a bit like a librarian. I would like to arrange all the books in the library so they're perfect, and then lock the door so no customers can come in because they're going to mess it up. Right? It's like, the library is perfect because no one's checking out books and it's going to stay perfect. So it was hard for me at first to work with other people and trust that experience. And I'm so glad I faced that limitation or mental barrier I had and opened the doors, because things like October never would have happened on my own.
Things, yeah. Especially if you have people you're working with, you're afraid, you might be nervous to work with them, but you realize they're just as brilliant and driven and passionate as you are. Then there's a relief knowing you're not the most creative guy in the room, because you have like-minded people with whom you can rely and they can rely on you. And as for train wrecks, never be afraid of a train wreck. Never be afraid of mistakes. Mistakes are how lessons are learned. You don't lose, you learn. And like Wayne Gretzky said it best, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yes. And for me, a key moment was reading a book about the Smiths and reading an article about David Bowie. And in both cases, it taught me that I didn't have to be in control of everything. And I didn't have to be driving everything. I could let the process ride out. So in the case of the Smiths, Morrissey would go hide in his room. You know, the guys are slaving away, they're recording, they're getting all the music together, and they're kind of like, where's that Morrissey guy? He just, he's never around. And they said at the right time, when they got to a certain point in the song, he would just show up. He'd walk up to the microphone. Speaking, my microphone's dropping. He'd walk up to the microphone, and out would come these fantastic lyrics. Because he had been listening, thinking and processing and doing his work. On the Bowie side, when they were working on the Heroes album, I believe it's the song Joe the Lion that opens the album. They said the whole band was doing their bit, doing their recordings, playing guest musicians, and you think, oh, David Bowie, he's there controlling everything. No, he's in the corner reading a newspaper while everybody else tracked their parts. And they said it seemed like he was ignoring everything they were doing. And then right at the right moment, when it was time to come to the mic, he folded the newspaper, put it down, walked up to the mic, one take, did all the lyrics for the song. And it was based on an article he had just read in the newspaper. So you don't have to be controlling everything to participate or to be creative. Bring something interesting to the table.
Absolutely. It's fabulous. You could write a song based on something that you read. Could it get any more timely than that?
Yeah, and that was, that album at the time didn't sell very well, but the song Heroes has gone on to become legendary after 9/11. And that was another case where they were recording vocals, set it all up, and they had this idea of having 3 microphones so that as David got louder, the near microphone would close down and the microphone a little further up would open up. And then when it got louder, that would close down, the next one would open up. So that naturally, as he got louder, the room got boomier. And they set this piece up, and I guess he was working on lyrics and whatnot, and Tony Visconti went downstairs and was smooching with his girlfriend over by the Berlin Wall. And I guess David had looked out the window and saw this. And when he came back, he's like, "Are you ready?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm ready. I've got it." And out comes these lyrics and this whole scene about standing by the Berlin Wall with rockets flying over and kissing and, not caring about it. And that came directly from that moment that he looked out the window and boom. So you never know when it's going to come. And I always thought I had to sit there and write and plot and figure out the notes on a piece of paper. And you don't. Just let yourself feel it, connect with it, and let it come out of you. And don't think about it, right? You can always erase it. You can always edit it. These days on a $500 laptop, you can produce an album and do all the editing to the nth degree. So if you have any, reservations about doing music or doing what you want, there's so much technology now that you can jump into it and see what happens.
The best part of technology, one of the very best parts, is that you can write from the heart and edit with the head. Just fill it out there to begin with. You can always take a little bit back, take back what's not good enough, and rewrite it, re-edit it. But just to getting it out on paper or on a laptop in the first place, and that's why I make people like David Bowie can be brave and be creative and spontaneous. It affords you the spontaneity. If you don't, if you get it out, you can always, there's always a chance you can, edit it later if you have to. If you don't have to, you have something brilliant because you weren't afraid in the first place to let it out. It's the perfect crash landing, if you will.
And a lot of the technology didn't exist to to really do that kind of editing before. So you had to, people, and it was very expensive. So you wanted to get it perfect and wanted to practice. And if you didn't, you kind of had to, layer it, obscure it, or do whatever technique you had to make it palatable. But now, just go for it. A friend of mine is working on my next single, fired up some software and said, okay, here's you. And now I can see where the notes are and, where this went off pitch or da-da-da-da-da. Let's play with it. And I'm having an interesting experience with it because I'm so used to how I normally sing it that when I hear the corrected version, it sounds better, but it sounds a little weird to me. And I think back at all the honky-tonk singers and a lot of the singers that I'm sure Danny heard and I heard growing up, and they're very pitchy, You get a lot of flat notes and nasal sounds, but they conveyed a message. So even if you say, "Oh, I'm not a good singer. I'm not good at this. I'm not," just do it. You never know. One of right now the best-selling track on my record label is one of the worst produced tracks that I've ever birthed. So you never know. If it connects with people, it connects with people.
Yeah, hearing the song you played earlier was very, very good. It brought back, memories of nightclubbing. I missed that. Even not nightclubbing, that kind of music. Um, if you don't hear it in a nightclub, if you hear it at night, if you hear it in a nighttime drive, while you're sitting next to the window after dark with a good book or a good meal, um, that kind of music is literally, it's the soundtrack, the pulse of life. I mean, you know, paintings and photographs take up space on a wall. Music takes up space in time, in memory. That's more why we need this. It is the soundtrack to our reality. It's how we measure time. It's how we, the space of time, the space of memory, and making memories. And also the soundtrack of that kind of music, that mood, that tempo. It's everything. It is everything. It courses through our veins. I don't know what else to tell you. And it denotes the best of times when you're at nightclubbing with like-minded people. It could be at a convention or Death Guild, the Monday nights, or a virtual nightclub, which is happening now. But even if it's not that, if it's by yourself in a room with a good book, or working on a bike or something, and that music is in the background, it's moving, it's righteous. And for that moment, you are at a club, even though you're in a garage or in a library.
I'm trying to think of how to describe it. There's a nightclub at Cat Club called Strange Love that Alex and I met at, and the DJ's been DJing from his bedroom, and he's set up stuff familiar to the club, and we've sometimes said, okay, it's time to go to bed, and we'll turn it on. I'm like, look, we're at the nightclub. And for us, it's like very nostalgic. Oh, I know that song. I know that song. I have that connection moment, even though we're, in lockdown. So I totally hear and relate to that. And another thing that popped in my mind was where the saxophone solo happens in the song. All of a sudden I saw motorcycles like in La Honda. It just had this rollingness, and I hadn't ever seen a visual for this song. And I was seeing like autumn leaves, like, big leaves falling or being on the road and the motorcycles. So I'm going to put in the back of your mind with your gang, if you guys have a GoPro or something where you generate some original driving around motorcycle video clips, and wouldn't mind me making a video for October, that would be a cool collaboration.
Yeah, that would be really
So
cool.
put that in the back of your mind for when you're out there. It is 7:20, and we have way after partied, and time for to wrap this up. And I thank you. If anybody is still watching out there, I thank you for sticking with us. And tune in next week. I do not have the list of guests up. You're just going to have to tune in. Check out on Facebook on my Caleb page, the Caleb band page, not the Caleb Duart page. And it will have a list. If you click on the more, it'll have a list of all the upcoming artists. We have folks booked through December 16th. So plenty more episodes coming. Again, thank you so much. Thank you, Joe, for all your words of wisdom and poetry that you bring to each and every episode.
And Caleb is right. You needn't worry that we don't have a list up, right? Because right now we're batting 1,000 with our guests, as you've seen. Our history speaks for itself, and that tells you what's left, what's yet to come. So by all means, tune in.
All right, Joe. Ciao. I will see you next week. Folks, I'm Caleb. You've been watching Sunday Live. Tune in next week for more artists and musicians from the San Francisco Bay Area and Seattle area on the show. Stay safe out there. If you would like to listen to some of my music, like you heard today, auditerrace.bandcamp.com. Also, caleb.bandcamp.com. Cuirbleu, Cuirbleu, bandcamp.com, and their official YouTube channels. There are music videos out there as well as the songs. Again, thank you so much. See you next week. Okay, we're reshooting the intro to today's episode because my audio was cut off, and this is what production looks like, folks. You just you just never know what's going to go right, what's going to go wrong, and you have to sometimes futz around. This is what you would see on TV if there weren't commercials. And if you've never seen it, you should tune into like outtakes from TV shows. It's amazing how real people get and how you see their real personality before the camera starts to roll. Okay, so for this episode, we've had the pre-show setup, and we're now going to introduction just after the opening song. Hey everybody, welcome to Sunday Live. My name is Caleb Duart, and I bring you each week from 5 to 6 o'clock a new artist that you may not have ever heard of. And they either perform, we show some videos, they may be composers, they may be visual artists, and it helps us all not go crazy during COVID. As usual, my sidekick Joe Price is here to help guide us and provide words of wisdom this week. And Joe, are you out there?
Absolutely, I am here.
How you doing this week?
Doing very well, thank you. We're doing a little construction for the motorcycle clubhouse, and getting tan lines in this week right before Halloween. It's just 6 or 7 more days until daylight savings time, so we simultaneously plunge into darkness with a full moon and Halloween on a Saturday night, and right before which we're getting tan lines here in sunny, beautiful California.
It's funny you're talking about tan lines. I think I'm getting freezer burn lines. It's cold here. We're like in the 30s and 40s.
I'll say this, it is getting a little bit cooler. I can tell you, the autumn air is making its presence known. Even when it's sunny, the sun is far lower into the sky, and so the bleached out days of glaring summer are now the deepest hues of noontime, where it looks like 9 a.m. from sunrise to sunset.
It certainly has to be an improvement over the Blade Runner-like skies, orange skies of the fire period.
Well, absolutely. Those days are gone, except we have a couple of more days of fire danger here because of very strong gusty winds threatening to tear down power poles. But it ends about Tuesday morning, Tuesday early afternoon. If we can get past that, then it seems as if we will be home free because everything is colder. And we even got drizzled on Saturday at work. There was a slight drizzle, which was incredible because I never thought I'd say it, but I really missed the rain.
Well, I'll send you some of ours. We've definitely had rain, and we're now getting snow on top of the mountains, when you see on the peaks.
Well, Mount Rainier must look very beautiful.
Oh, Rainier's a whole nother beast because that's snow year round, which is unreal when you're driving south to Seattle on I-5 and you round a corner and there's just this. Quite often it's hazy and so you don't see it, so you don't pay attention to it. But if it's a clear day, all of a sudden this hilly, the mountains here are not as massive like the Sierras or something like that. There are these jaggy, fairly tall, snow-tipped peaks, but all of a sudden you're driving to Seattle, you're thinking, oh, waterways and inlets and hills, and all of a sudden there's like Mount Fuji jumps out of the sky at you. It's huge.
Blood red with the sunset, I'm sure.
Yeah, and if it's a warm day, seeing that big of a mountain snow-capped. And then the next thought you have is, that's an active volcano.
Yeah, it's not extinct. Mount Tamalpais in Marin County is an extinct volcano, the Sleeping Lady, for a reason. But Mount Rainier is, you got to watch out. Mount Rainier could be a very bad neighbor if we're not on our toes, keeping tabs, geologically speaking. I'd be a little bit nervous. But it probably adds an edge of adventure to living up in Seattle, I would think.
Like earthquakes, like like people think about earthquakes in San Francisco. Although we've got up here the Cascade fracture zone, which potentially can produce a far worse earthquake than San Andreas.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so if that didn't work, you'd still have Mount Rainier. That is your Godzilla. Tokyo has Godzilla. You have Mount Rainier.
Mount Rainier versus the Cascade fault zone, which is going to decimate your life first. I looked up at the Rainier flood plains. Like if there's a minor eruption, it looks like it mainly goes east, and all the mud and water flows end up in Tacoma. So Seattle and north of Seattle has very apparently, of course, it could go off in a different way, but apparently, even if there was an eruption, it wouldn't be that bad where I am. It would suck for a lot of people south of Seattle and Tacoma, the airport and south of that. But most of the
That due to real estate.
new mud flats for artists, and apparently the likelihood of it going off in my lifetime is very low. The earthquake danger is actually higher.
Yeah, yeah. It's all the mundane stuff that'll get you.
Mud-dane?
No,
Yeah, so folks, live life, go out, do what you want, because no matter what you've built up in your head that your life is going to be, you could have a volcano or a major earthquake and tsunami wipe you out tomorrow. So, you got to balance things. You want to plan for the future in case those things don't happen because they're low probability. But at the same time, go do your thing. And today we have a guest who has certainly gone and done his own thing. And that is Danny Uzilevsky. And I'm sure he will help me, pronounce his name correctly when we chat. He is a singer, songwriter, musician, and who's also a very big collaborator. If I was going to do this title screen again, I would do collaborator. He's worked with a lot of different artists, folks I know, like Lee Preston on the Nails, Essence, who, if you've caught Bernie and the Believers project, you would know of Essence, and they are now collaborating on a lot of stuff, and we're going to show a video of their Tiny Desk submission later on. The rest of the show will be interviewing with Danny and have live performances. Hey, Danny, are you out there? Cut. All right, that's the new intro.
Right on.
The both of us. I figured I'd take it to that moment that we had in the live broadcast. Anybody watching the show right now, we were just retaping the beginning of the episode because I had some audio problems on my end. I have absolutely no spare time in my life right now, but at some point, we have our last episode on December 16th. And I'm thinking at that point, maybe take a break, and keep doing the show, but take a break as far as having new guests. What I'll do is I'll download each week old episodes, edit them, clean them up, and then re-show them during a watch party. And because right now every episode has crazy challenges from a technical standpoint. I think we've only had like 3 out of 31 episodes that have gone without a hitch. So, but I just need to get the time. What was that?
Zoom's answer to syndication.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, it's raw, it's real, but I feel like these episodes could use a little trimming and repair. So I'm thinking over maybe the Christmas holiday, if I get a chance, I'll start downloading and editing these. For now, enjoy them in their raw glory. All right, going to stop streaming. You guys all have a great week, and I will see you again next weekend.